o'clock. Let's go ahead and get started, please. I see some new faces in the audience. Thank you for coming, and those returning, thank you also for coming. We would like to start off with a prayer and a moment of silence. James, may I turn it to you?
Be glad to. Let's bow our heads, please. Our gracious Heavenly Father, bless the day that you've given us to live, Lord. And Lord, we just reach out to the people in Florida as they've gone through a catastrophic hurricane last night. And may our thoughts and prayers be with them. In God's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. If I could ask you to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, Council, is there a nomination for agenda approval for the public hearing?
I move to approve the agenda for the public hearing.
Thank you, Tina. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to App, please.
Thank you. Public hearing has been called on item 1, ordinance TA-2024-06, an ordinance amending the zoning ordinance of the City of Houston, Georgia, Article 4, zoning districts and official zoning map, Section 4.14, mixed use district, Table 4.3, permitted and conditional uses in non-residential zoning districts to amend daycare center permissions in the MU mixed use district, zoning district, and for other purposes. And I hereby open that public hearing. Jennifer, could you confirm that notice has been given? It has. After we hear a report from Mr. Whites, our city planner, we will allow speakers as to this item, and the speakers must abide by the following rules. This will go for item 1 as well as item 2 that I'll call second after we finish this hearing. If I ask whether you want to speak, and you do want to speak, then raise your hand. I'll then call you up, come to the podium, state your name, your address, whether you're a resident of the City of Houston. Please speak only to the merits of the issue, address all comments to mayor and council, refrain from personal attacks, discuss the facts instead of giving opinions and speculation. To allow an opportunity to as many people who wish to speak as possible, please don't duplicate points that have already been made. I'll take a look at how many people raise their hand, and then I'll make sure everybody has enough time to speak. And agendas and outlines of public hearing procedures are located on or near the entrance to the meeting room. And after the hearing is closed, we'll move on to item 2. Mr. Whites.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes. Ordinance TA 2024-06 is an application by a private property owner. They're able to apply to amend the text of the zoning ordinance, and in this case, the applicant's own property up there in what we call the Creekside Village commercial area. They're proposing a daycare center. The property is zoned MU Mixed Use District. The MU district was written without allowing daycare centers. Daycare centers are currently prohibited, so they applied to allow for daycare centers, childcare centers, adult centers, all of those related uses as a permitted use rather than a prohibited use. Staff recommendation initially was for approval as a permitted use. Went to the Planning Commission. Planning Commission held a hearing on it and discussed pretty extensively some worries about traffic generation by daycare centers. And in the end, the discussion was they felt better if a daycare center would be a conditional use rather than a permitted use. And what the difference is, a conditional use would require an application by the property owner, even after this one's done, to approve it. There would be a site plan and analysis of criteria and so forth, and the opportunity to mitigate any kind of traffic conditions or other impacts. And so that was the recommendation of the Planning Commission, to approve it, but as a conditional use, and the ordinance in your package, I think we've done an ordinance for it, shows it reflecting the recommendation of the planning commission. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. White. Does anyone wish to speak as to this matter? If so, please raise your hand. All right, I see two hands. Sir, if you'll come up first, right here. Come to the podium, state your name, your address, whether you're a resident of the city of Houston. You'll have up to 5 minutes.
Send a man to the moon, can't fix this.
Go for it now.
Now can you hear me?
That's better.
There you go.
All right, thank you. Hey, my name is Kenny Whitworth. I live at 150 Fortress Way in Jefferson, Georgia. However, I am a business owner in the city of Houston, and I'm acting tonight as a real estate agent for the sellers or the owners of this property tonight. We would like to ask, and when this first came about, we have this property under contract for a daycare center that would like to come here. It's called Peach State Academy. And then in a moment, I'd like to ask if that website could be pulled up so I could, show you some pictures and some site work of what they're looking to do. We're asking that this be permitted without any type of conditional use. We did not speak at the Planning Commission, but I do want to let you know the way this property sits, the 2 acres that we're asking to be permitted, and at the current time, and we've had meetings with Dr. Weiss about this, is that we were kind of shocked that mixed use would not allow for a daycare center, because we at first thought, we thought, well, mixed use commercial, we could use a daycare center. It was zoned, and we had looked at doing a hotel there. However, the daycare center come about, and we were like, it's kind of a win-win for the city of Houston, that we felt like a no-brainer for a daycare center, which would serve the entire community. And we are very cognizant of our neighbors and what they think and so forth. So we took the idea of a daycare center to the Creekside community, which is the subdivision behind this property, and talked with them about it. And I think they even gave us a letter and voiced their approval that yes, we would love to have a daycare center here. And I believe that's part of your information that you have. And I wanted to explain and touch a little bit about what maybe any of that concern that the Planning Commission had about traffic. I don't think they realize that I have already spoken to the district engineer named Jason Dykes in Gainesville with the DOT about this project. And I do have a verbal approval from him directly that they are okay with us adding an egress from this property on, if you're looking at the property, there's 3 1/3 acres. The 2 acres on the corner where Creekside subdivision, the entrance, there'll be an entrance but in front of those townhomes, and the road would continue on behind the daycare center, parcel that had been zoned C2 with the possibility of having a car wash next door, and we would have a road that would go behind that second parcel and have a right to State Route 3. So it gives a second egress to people getting in and out. So all the traffic would not be going back out to, I'm not sure the name of the road, but the Creekside Eagles Bluff Way. So we are going to relieve traffic off of Eagles Bluff Way. The daycare traffic can go behind and go right out without having to go to Eagles Bluff Way on the parcels and the traffic alignments that we have and we've talked to DOT about. So not only, there's going to be, it won't be a public road, but it'll be a private drive that to standards, we haven't, it's not going to be a city street that they would have to take care of. But it would be a road that even the Eagle Bluff Way residents, if they wanted to go right on 53 and there were cars at Eagle Bluff Way, they could cut through and still take a right behind these businesses. So, to relieve congestion, that is something that, I don't think at the time the planning commission was aware of, because we didn't speak there. So I wanted to make you aware of that. I think that's it's a really good, opportunity to relieve any type of traffic congestion. It is a state route. The DOT I've talked to them about this project. They're fine with it. And talking to Mr. White's originally before it went to Planning Commission, we just don't feel like it should have any conditional uses. We're basically just asking, rather than it be prohibited, to be permitted use for mixed use in the city of Houston for a daycare center. So we would appreciate your consideration on this matter, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Whitworth.
Can I ask one more thing? Can I show them the pictures of the daycare center?
You can, however, if I'm not, correct me if I'm not right, Mr. Whites, but this is for an ordinance change, not just affecting this one piece of property, right?
Yes, that's exactly right, and I did want to address that because when the Planning Commission looks at it, or when we look at it, it's what we call a global change. It's like anywhere we have a MU zoning district, a daycare center would be permitted or conditional, whichever you decide. Now, in this case, however, this is the only piece of property in the city that has MU zoning, and so even though usually the site-specific stuff would not be relevant to it, it really is in this case because it's the only piece of ground in the city of Houston that this would apply to at the current time.
But we could not mandate with this ordinance change, if we went to permitted, all the traffic improvements that Mr. Whitworth has mentioned.
That's correct. Not at all. We could not do that.
Yeah, okay. You're welcome to show them the property, Mr. Whitworth.
Jennifer? Yes. And it has, this is the website for the company that was going to build the daycare here. It's Peach State Academy. They have 2 locations in Oconee County currently. And this is, is there some way that you guys could go to the pictures? Yeah.
Pictures there.
Yeah, there should be. It's our team. Somewhere on here, there's, if you go up, maybe go to, curriculum, or maybe at more. They did have pictures on their website of their facilities now.
Don't you have the pictures on your phone? If you go on Google Maps, there are.
Oh, Google Maps? Okay. If you could go to Google Maps and, Peach State Academy, Oconee. Yes. That's it. And I believe, they've got pictures, or there was pictures of, the exterior building, which is there. It's got pictures of the, let's see, they might be on different. Yeah, that's the exterior, let's see.
Second row all the way to the
That's-
left.
yeah.
I mean, the lake.
Jennifer's got it.
Mr. Whitworth, I've
Yeah,
got 5
I'm sorry.
pictures. I'll send these out to all the council members.
Okay, thanks. They've got it's a really first-class facility. It's got, playground equipment. They have, turf, grass. I mean, it's clean, neat. I think it'd be a very beneficial thing for the city of Cushman. I'm aware that up to 245 kids, I believe, and they also take infant, which is a great need for the community. A lot of daycares do not have infants. Anyway, but I appreciate the time, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank
Kenny,
you.
what's the square footage of the building?
I'm not sure. I don't know. Okay. I do know that they told us they needed 2 acres. Big enough, the complex to have the building and playground that will accommodate enough rooms for the 5 kids.
That includes the parking lot, the 200, the 200.
That includes the parking lot, yes, sir.
And what are you planning on doing with the other acre?
There's an acre and a third that has been already, previously, it's mixed use with, no, I think we changed it to the C2. It's been zoned C2, to accommodate C3, with the only condition of being a car wash.
Thank you, Mr. Whitworth. All right, sir. Please.
Ace Savito, 100 Powell Court. I am a resident of the city, and full disclosure, I'm also a member of the City Planning and Zoning Board. I have 2 points. One was talking to some of the residents of the city. There seemed to be some confusion as during the Planning and Zoning meeting, and I did go back and watch the video, and I don't know if someone here can address it. If the intent was for that property to either have the child care center or the car wash, or both. And so there was some confusion, and it came to my attention after the meeting. So that point hasn't been, I want to just make sure what the clarification was on that. And I don't know, it's for both. And so the second point, and again, it was unfortunate that we didn't have the real estate agent there or a representative. So I'm hearing tonight for the first time that there's a private road that's going to be part of that complex. We were not aware of that at the time. And then the last point I'd like to make is with the charter school that's going to be approved, that's already, matter of fact, I saw an advertisement on Fox News last night for it. So that's in Brazelton, right there next to that property. Reading the zoning that the city of Brazelton, when they approved it, and addressing the traffic congestion, the way it was initially talked about was that there would be a law enforcement officer there to direct traffic. When you read into it, it doesn't specifically say there has to be. It's based on a determination of the school, which concerns me. And the Planning and Zoning Board, now I'm wearing that hat, we are all in favor. We need childcare, no doubt about it. We need it in the city to help our city grow and to take care of the residents and the young families. Again, we wanted the conditional just so we can have a hard look at the traffic. It's the biggest concern we get from a lot of the citizens on the traffic on 53. So anything about that's our biggest concern. We just want to have the conditional so they can come back and we can look at whatever the traffic's going to be and make sure that, the citizens that live in that neighborhood behind it aren't inconvenienced, and especially the citizens going up and down 53. And that's my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, did y'all have any questions for anyone or comments?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I had a question on the private versus public road. We've recently had some issues on that. Will that in fact be a private road, or will that be not a road, or just the parking, or what is that?
What the plan was to have, when you enter off of Eagle Bluffs Way, a 2-lane road that where the residents, so if someone's going to the daycare, you got 2 lanes. You come in and pull in, or you can come back out and go to Eagle Bluff Way, so if you're gonna take a left on 53. And then it was gonna go down to a single lane to go out on the 53, because DOT said we're going to have a right on, out, egress. So if somebody could still,
if you're going left, you could go to Eagles Bluff Lake and take a left. If you're going right on 53, it would be easy, just merge on the 53 as a right out. So the difference between public and private, and we don't have a problem doing it public, but there's a difference in the way you construct the road. And the reason we didn't want to do public is because we couldn't do a 2-lane all the way through the property. It has to be 2 lanes into 1, because if we don't have enough property in the other parcel to do a 2-lane road with the storm easements and other things that are possible, that what we need to do in that 1.1 1⅓ acre. And so that's why once you go to the daycare, you can turn left on and take a single lane all the way right out. But on a 2-lane road, they didn't want, and this is one reason why DOT approved this, they don't want cars going both, they don't want cars turning off of 53 into that area. It wasn't gonna be a right in, right out, it was just for traffic sake and safety, just a right on.
Okay.
So it would go 2 lanes into 1. So I'm not sure you could do a public road, unless you had 2 lanes going both ways.
Well, one of my concerns on a private road, I love the idea of you maintaining it and taking care of it. But one of the concerns that I had was, on a private road, you can gate it if you wish. And do you have any objections to saying that there never can be gates so the people?
No objection at all.
Okay,
Yeah, that's no objection, because that's never been intended at all. It's for people to use to relieve traffic. And we do honestly believe it will relieve traffic off people's Bluff Way. Also, we'll construct it the way that people want. And also, we believe that once, during the permit process, the land disturbance permit process, that could be added at that time to assure you, during the permitting process.
Well, I just want to clarify, Mr. Brown, that although the zoning ordinance is before us, the particulars of this property are not before us. So questions about gating, private road, public road, even construction of a road I hear what Mr. Whitworth's saying, and I know Mr. Whitworth to be a straight-up guy, and I'm sure they intend to do what he says, but that's not before us and would not be a condition of this ordinance, because this is an ordinance that would apply to any mixed-use zoning district in the city on any property anywhere in the future. So it's good to have this conversation, but if I don't want you to leave here with the impression that we can mandate no gating or even the construction of a road, because we can't do that through this process. It's kind of odd because we're on an ordinance change, not on a zoning classification change.
okay. Well, and thank you for clarifying that for me. Because the reason I was asking was, could we add that to the ordinance if we go in the future, if this gets approved, we could say that all daycares that have this have to have this in there.
No, I think that would be more of a site-specific thing that we
Okay.
would need to, and I predict that's one reason that Mr. Acevedo and planning wanted this to be a conditional use, so they could look property by property at the daycare center and what would be best. But I'm not speaking in favor of the ordinance. I have no opinion on it. I didn't know this property was even involved in it until it opened, but I just want to make sure that y'all are clear as to what's before us and don't feel like the rug's pulled out from under you later, if,
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
First of all, I want to say I'm so glad we have Planning and Zoning Commission in place now. Their input, to have their insight, all the different perspectives and all that have been super helpful to me as a council member. So thank you for your service. Second, daycare in Houston, I think, is a needed thing. It's a positive thing. But this particular issue before us is not really about this particular daycare center. It looks wonderful. I think it would be a fantastic addition to the community. But I do worry about making a global change to zoning mixed use, allowing for daycare centers. I think there is actually a second mixed-use property right across from Oak Street, but that's a side matter. The thing is, as we annex and grow, there could be additional new mixed-use zonings, and I think that the council will always need the control, the decision-making control, based on location, whether it's traffic flow or whatever else the peripheries are. I think that, conditional, zoning or conditional approval of daycare is more adequately going to address the fact that we need to see the site and know the plan before we make a global decision. Daycares can go anywhere in mixed use, whether it's these two properties or a future mixed use. So, personal opinion, I think planning and zoning came to the right decision, changing it from permitted to conditional. It's permanent, it's global, and I think the council and mayor need to be able to look at each proposal.
Thank you.
All right, if there are no other questions, go ahead.
Mr. Kenny, is there a reason, can you tell us why the conditional does the conditional hurt you guys? Does it stop the project? Because, I mean, I agree with.
Timeline for this project.
Okay.
We, as far as it being, and the way we, originally, when I talked to Mr. White about this, it was just basically, hey, mixed use would be allowed, permitted rather than prohibited, but everybody is gonna have to go by, no matter who builds what on any property, it goes through a permitting process. And so when you go through your land disturbance permit, a lot of the questions that you have, or something that's been brought up, will be addressed on the site-specific location when the permit, the land disturbance permit is applied to. Therefore, we don't believe it should be conditional, that it would be, and we're okay with us presenting what we're doing during the permitting process. We don't see how it would be a detriment to the city on a mixed-use zoning to have daycare center. Currently, if someone wanted to do a daycare center, Jerry, do you mind me asking, where is daycare zone, in the city right now?
C2 is the zoning of Georgia Kids Academy across the street up here.
So C2. So, as he mentioned, maybe a possibility, one other mixed-use site in the entire city. So someone, if they came and wanted to do a daycare center, it's gonna have to rezone their property to C2. This text amendment allows us, since we're already mixed use, instead of having to spend another 3 weeks, the situation with our property and us being able to sell it is based on a time frame. And if we're not able to produce it during a certain time frame, it's very possible that we will lose the daycare center this academy. So that's why it's very important that we went the text amendment route, for this.
Jerry, are we gonna slow them down? I don't see that, so I'm.
Well, if all this ordinance would do, if you said it's permitted, or if it's conditional, is it would authorize them to file an application on that site for a conditional use permit. That's what they'd have to do. He's indicating that that's gonna take him more like probably 5 weeks or something. And so he's concerned about his schedule of what he's already discussed with the prospective purchaser.
Is there not a chance to speed that up? I mean, I agree with Tina that to go and just do it globally doesn't make sense, but we're not gonna try to slow them down, right?
Well, we do not, we have a set schedule once
Sure.
a month for these types of applications, and we have never set a precedent to hold special meetings of the planning commission and city council to move a project forward. We just wouldn't want to do that.
We'd also have to advertise 15 to 45 days before the public hearing. I mean, that's a state law as well as our local, so, I mean, we couldn't just next week schedule this to take it up.
Fair enough.
He's correct when he said it would delay him. That's what I'm getting at.
Okay.
I personally think that wisdom takes priority. You, council and mayor, vote how you want to vote. I am very much in favor of conditional and urge you to vote for conditional. I don't know that a 5-week delay will kill a project. We want to move carefully and wisely, because the future of Houston is in every vote. And I think that oversight of where we locate certain businesses, daycares, needs to be maintained for future mixed-use zoning as well as existing. I'm very favorable to your daycare in that location, in the city of Houston. I just think that it is very concerning to just permit it and let them go forward. It doesn't have to come back to us before permitting. We're done after this if it's not conditional. And that loss of control and seeing how Houston grows and develops is concerning.
All right, any other questions? Then I'll close the public hearing. I'll move on to item 2. A public hearing has been called on item 2 on the public hearing agenda, ordinance O-2024-05, an ordinance amending the subdivision and land development ordinance of the City of Houston, Georgia, Article 7, storm drainage and utilities, to add a new section 707, oversizing of utilities and development agreements, and I hereby open that public hearing. Jennifer, could you confirm that public notice has been given? Mr. Whites?
Yes, Mayor and Council, this ordinance was initiated at the request of the city engineer, Jerry Hood. He saw that we did something similar in Jefferson and said, hey, we need this in Houston. So we put a draft together. It was reviewed by the city attorney. He had some suggested improvements to the language. So we went back to the drawing board and tried to tighten it up and be more specific on exactly how we would approach a situation like this. And that change was made basically right before the Planning Commission. So Planning Commission had the earlier draft and then received a copy of the revised draft, and we discussed this at length. There were several concerns and issues that were raised by the Planning Commission. You can see those reflected in the minutes of the Planning and Zoning Commission. But in short, they did recommend approval of the revised version of this ordinance. So that's the recommendation of the Planning Commission, is to proceed with the ordinance as written.
Does anyone wish to speak as to this matter? If so, raise your hand. All right, do you have any questions or comments relating to this?
Jerry, can you give an example of oversizing the utilities? Is that going from like an 8-inch water pipe to 12 or?
That's a very good example. Yes, sir.
Okay. And ultimately, it comes under the expense of the city, of course, to do these utilities and upgrades, right?
Yes, the ordinance is clear that we would not impose any cost to the developer that was not associated with their project itself. Any oversizing, any additional capacity that doesn't serve that project, it's not fair to impose that cost on that property owner, and so the city would pay for that additional upgrading for oversizing.
So,
I have a question, if I may. I think this may be addressed to you, Ab. I don't understand when we say it's not fair to the developer who's making a profit to pay the bill, which puts the bill back on our citizens who are gaining no profit whatsoever. So this, to me, sounds like a legal thing, where why don't, if at the bottom they need 12 inches and they only need 8-inch, using Mr. Lawson's example, and we know that, why don't we right off the bat tell them to start with 12-inch?
Now, I think what Mr. Whites and Mr. Hood were trying to accomplish here is a development comes in and they need 8-inch, and Jerry take a look at the surrounding area and say, well, you know, while y'all are in there doing it, it sure would be better for development of future properties that you don't control or own if instead of 8-inch it was 12-inch or whatever. And Jerry, you correct me if I'm misstating some of this. And so they said, what we will do is we could mandate that that work be done while they're in there putting in the new 8-inch, but they would only be responsible for the amount that was needed to serve their development, as opposed to be responsible for the amount to serve properties that they don't control or develop.
Wow.
It's an economy of once they're in there, and then I think it's contemplated, and I don't have the ordinance in front of me, that then the cost that was incurred would be borne by future developers. Is that right, Jerry?
That's correct.
Yeah.
But I still don't understand, I guess. If we know at the end we need 12-inch, why don't we start with 12-inch?
Who is we? What do you mean by we?
If I'm developer one and I'm building on the north side and I only need 8-inch, and I built my facility and had 8-inch, and developer two comes in that builds a little bit further south of me, and because of the water pressure, we need 12-inch, why wouldn't we just mandate that on builder one right now?
I can answer it in part. If the city knows that you need a 12-inch line, we project that, and the city is doing the project, the city will build a 12-inch line and pay for it. But if the applicant only needs an 8-inch line and we determine later that it would be beneficial not to have to dig that up later and put in a larger pipe, that the time is now, let's dig once and put the right size pipe in there, then we can do that, but we cannot saddle the property owner with that. And I'm looking at Mr. Josh Scoggins out in the room, and I know that he was on the opposing council when the city got sued over impact fees. And impact fees are very much based on this principle of proportionate, you can only charge a proportionate share of the cost of improvements. And so if it's proven that they only need 8-inch and we require a 12-inch, then they can hire Mr. Scoggins, his law firm, and they'll come in and claim that we have an unlawful exaction, that we're violating the Development Impact Fee Act, and that they will sue us if we don't back down. So
Yeah, I mean,
that's very much a legal principle.
Yeah, and I can imagine a situation, Mr. Brown, where, let's say there's a 500-acre tract of property and one person owns it, and they sell, a few acres off, and somebody's gonna put in a few houses or a Ace Hardware or whatever, and the city looks at it, and Jerry Hood looks at it, and Jerry Whites looks at it, and they say, well, I know you could pretty easily do your development with an 8-inch pipe, but it sure would be better if we put a much bigger infrastructure in here, because we know eventually this 500 acres is going to be developed. The theory would be that would be quite the hit for the guy trying to put the Ace Hardware in to bear all that cost, such that 495 acres that he or she doesn't own can be developed more effectively. So it doesn't give a break to the developer that's going first. It's actually for the convenience of the city, who doesn't have to come back in later and oversize they'd have to dig it up and do it again. So we're kind of getting into the business of a property owner, before, on issues that don't even affect that property owner's property, but of course it benefits the city, and they set up a mechanism in there for evaluating the increased cost that would be borne, and an opportunity for a hearing and an appeal and a debate over whether it's fair or not. So, I mean, I think it's a well-written ordinance by Jerry that accomplishes some things that are related to the greater good for the city and future development. Does that make sense?
I do understand it.
Yeah.
But I still don't see, if we know there needs to be a 12-inch down there, why we just don't do that, and that's basically the cost of doing business. It's kind of like every time we build a road, 6 months later, we're redoing it because we didn't do it right the first time. Or when we build a school, 6 months later, there's trailers because we didn't plan for the future. And